the virtual Common Council meeting, April 20th, 2020 to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Galloway.
To the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for having patience with us as we begin our tour down virtual lane with Common Council meetings, with everything that's happened with COVID. Roll call. Clerk Treasurer Parthun.
Hey, Councilman Frankie,
Present.
Councilman Vincent,
Here.
Councilwoman Brown,
Here.
Councilwoman Pikett,
Here.
Councilwoman West, Councilman Galloway, Councilwoman Butler.
Present.
All present.
Okay. Petitions and comments of the citizens. We don't have any currently, but we're also going to look at that at the end, and we may look at during this virtual time is looking to offer those questions at the end of the meeting as well. And yes, you can submit those on Facebook, either on the City of LaPorte Facebook page, right, Tim Frankie?
Correct.
Frankie, or Tom Dermody LaPorte Mayor page. So we try to be as open and available as possible.
We also have a stream on YouTube.
Well versed. And I would like to thank Tim Frankie for all his efforts to help us through this technological learning experience. We certainly have appreciated your efforts. Did we approve the minutes? We have two sets of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes is presented. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes on first set 7-0. We do have a second set of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes is presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the second set of minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion also passes 7-0. Again, the petitions and comments of citizens, we'll keep that open even near the end. Tom Casey. We want to welcome Tom Casey, our new planner, director of development, annual redevelopment commission report. If you could give us a very brief summary on this report. Tom, your volume. Tom Casey, I think your volume's.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Tom Casey, the new city planner. I just recently took over from Beth Schrader. I've been in the job a couple weeks. Kind of a unique time to get started, but learning a lot and really enjoying it, and enjoying getting to work with everyone. The summary, the activities for the Redevelopment Commission during 2019 are as follows. In TIF 1, the Commission continued engineering design for remediation of properties in Newport Landing, assisted in the funding of the Clear Lake floodplain map revision, continued wetland mitigation activities along the shores of Clear Lake, completed remediation for a medical office building site within Phase 2A area, and began environmental cleanup for the remainder of Phase 2A area. Also completed design for Clear Lake Boardwalk Overlook and Trailhead, the trail connector and parking lot area east of Newport Boulevard. In TIF Area 2, the Commission completed design and first phase for the sewer separation project on Boyd Boulevard. In TIF 4, the Commission acquired farm property for stormwater management and future development adjacent to TIF 5 and within TIF 2 area. If that's clear.
Yes, and so this is something that does not need to be voted on. All the data is there for your review. Are there any other questions? And we have Bert Cook on with us too, that can answer any questions due to Tom being new. So are there any questions, Councilman Galloway or anybody else? Hearing none, we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman West, introduction of an ordinance. Councilwoman West, I think your volume.
Get closer. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Get closer. Would you like me to start over or just continue?
Please go ahead and start over.
I move to introduce an ordinance read for the first time in its entirety. An ordinance of the City of LaPorte, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of the City of LaPorte, Indiana taxable economic development revenue bond, FNC Development Incorporated project, and the lending of the proceeds thereof to Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation, and authorizing and approving other actions in respect thereto. Whereas.
Second.
Okay, so
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So now, Councilwoman West, go ahead and read the rest now.
Whereas the City of LaPorte, Indiana, the city, is a political subdivision of the state of Indiana, and by virtue of Indiana Code 36-7-11.9 and Indiana Code 36-7-12, collectively, the act is authorized and empowered to adopt this ordinance, the bond ordinance, and to carry out its provisions. Whereas Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation, or an affiliate thereof, the borrower, desires to provide funds to FNC Development Incorporated, the developer, to enable the developer to finance all or a portion of the cost of the acquisition, construction, renovation, and equipping of a mixed-use project consisting of retail, commercial, and/or office space and residential units, together with related amenities and improvements. The project, which will be located in the Central Business Allocation Area Number 4, FNC area, created by the LaPorte Redevelopment Commission in the city, which project the borrower anticipates leasing from the developer and then subleasing to the LaPorte Redevelopment Commission and the developer. Whereas the borrower has advised the LaPorte Economic Development Commission and the city that it proposes that the city issues its taxable economic development revenue bonds, FNC Development Incorporated project, in one or more series with an appropriate series designation for each series, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $9 million, the bonds under the act, and loan the proceeds of such bonds to the borrower for the purpose of providing such funds to the developer for the financing of the project. Whereas the completion of the project results in the diversification of industry, the creation or retention of jobs, and the creation or retention of business opportunities in the city. Whereas pursuant to Indiana Code Section 36-7-12-24, the Commission published notice of a public hearing, on the proposed issuance of the bonds to finance the project. Whereas the Commission has heretofore held a public hearing on the project, and whereas the Commission has performed all actions required of it by the Act preliminary to the adoption of this bond ordinance, and has approved and forwarded to the Common Council the forms of a loan agreement, note, trust indenture, and other financing documents, collectively the financing agreements. Now therefore be it ordained by the City of LaPorte Common Council as follows. Section 1, Findings, Public Benefits. The Common Council hereby finds and determines that the project involves the acquisition, construction, renovation, and equipping of economic development facility as that phrase is used in the Act, that the project will increase or retain employment opportunities and increase diversification of economic development in the city, will improve and promote the economic stability, development, and welfare in the city, will encourage and promote the expansion of industry, trade, and commerce in the city and the location of other industries in the city. And therefore, that the financing of the project by the issuance of the bonds under the Act, one, will be of benefit to the health and general welfare of the city, and two, complies with the Act. Section 2, approval of financing. The proposed financing of the project by the issuance of the bonds under the Act in the form that such financing was approved by the Commission is hereby approved. Section 3, authorization of the bonds. The issue of the bonds payable solely from revenues and receipts derived from the financing agreements is hereby authorized. Section 4, terms of the bond. A, the bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $9 million shall, 1, be executed at or prior to the closing date by the manual or facsimile signatures of the mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city. 2, by date as of the date of delivery. 3, mature on a date not later than 25 years after the date of issuance. 4, bear interest at such rates not to exceed 7% per annum as determined through public bidding or private negotiation with the purchaser thereof, as determined by the clerk treasurer prior to the sale thereof, with which interest payable as provided in the financing agreement. 5, be issuable in such denominations as set forth in the financing agreements. 6, be issuable only in fully registered form. 7, be subject to registration on the bond register as provided in the financing agreements. 8, be payable in lawful money of the United States of America. 9, be payable at an office as provided in the financing agreements. 10, be subject to optional redemption prior to maturity and subject to redemption as otherwise provided in the financing agreements. 11, be issued in one or more series. And 12, contain such other terms and provisions as may be provided in the financing agreements. B, the bonds and the interest thereon do not and shall never constitute an indebtedness of or a charge against the general credit or taxing power of the city, but shall be special and limited obligations of the city, payable solely from revenues and other amounts derived from the financing agreement. Forms of the financing agreements are before this meeting and are by this reference incorporated into this bond ordinance. And the clerk treasurer of the city is hereby directed in the name and on behalf of the city to insert them into the minutes of the common council and to keep them on file. Section 5, the sale of the bonds. The mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city are hereby authorized and directed in the name and on behalf of the city to sell the bonds to a purchaser or purchasers selected by such officers either through public bidding or by private negotiation, and such prices not less than 99% of the par amount thereof, and on such terms as may be determined at the time of sale. Section 6, execution and delivery of financing agreements. The mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city are hereby authorized and directed in the name and on behalf of the city to execute or endorse and deliver the loan agreement, the promissory note from the borrower to the city, the trust indenture, and the bonds submitted to the common council, which are hereby approved in all respects. Section 7, changes in financing agreements. The mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city are hereby authorized in the name and on behalf of the city without further approval of the common council or the commission to approve such changes in the financing agreements as may be permitted by the act, such approval to be conclusively evidenced by their execution thereof. Section 8, general. The mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city and each of them are hereby authorized and directed in the name and on behalf of the city to execute or endorse any and all agreements, documents, and instruments, perform any and all acts, approve any and all matters, and do any and all things deemed to be by them or either of them to be necessary or desirable in order to carry out and comply with the intent, conditions, and purposes of this bond ordinance, including the preambles hereto and the documents mentioned herein. The project, the issuance and the sale of the bonds, and the securing of the bonds under the financing agreements, and any such execution, endorsement, performance, or doing of other things heretofore affected be and hereby is ratified and approved. Section 9, binding effect. The provisions of this bond ordinance and the financing agreement securing the bonds shall constitute a binding contract between the city and the holders of the bonds. And after issuance of the bonds, this bond ordinance shall not be repealed or amended in any respect which would adversely affect the rights of the holders of the bonds as long as the bonds or interest thereon remains unpaid. Section 10, repeal. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. Section 11, effective date. This bond ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon adoption and compliance with Indiana Code Section 36-4-6 and Section 12, copies of financing agreements on file. 2 copies of the financing agreements incorporated into this bond ordinance were duly filed in the city of the clerk treasurer of the city and are available for public inspection and in accordance with Indiana Code Section 36-1-5-4. This is the end of the ordinance.
Julie West, Councilwoman West, great job. Before we get into discussion, this is only the first reading. I thought we could get a version of what was just discussed or stated from Bert Cook, Economic Development.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As the Mayor said, Bert Cook, Executive Director of the LaPorte Economic Advancement Partnership. So many of you will have heard and will remember talking about the Flaherty and Collins project over the last couple of years. We started this project in 2017. I'm very happy today to kind of tell you that we're entering the last leg of the project, which is exciting for us. And obviously, I think there are many in the community that are very excited to see this construction begin as well. So just as a reminder, the Flaherty and Collins intends to build 200 new high-end apartments that will also include 5,000 square feet of commercial space. And they're a national developer who builds these type of projects throughout the country, from Texas to Washington, D.C. So today you have 2 items that are going to be in front of you that are directly related to this project. The first is the ordinance that Councilwoman Schroeder West just read. And so to give you a synopsis of that, this is the mechanism that was created through the Redevelopment Commission in partnership with our financial advisors from Baker Tilly, and Jason Semler and Andy Mauser are on this call with us today. If during discussion you have specific questions as to the financing, they would be able to answer those. But they worked in partnership with Tom Pittman of Barnes and Dornberg on designing this tool to help finance this project. And so last week at the Plan Commission meeting, the Plan Commission voted unanimously in favor of providing a positive recommendation of this plan to you on the council today. And so I'll get into the numbers a little bit. Flaherty and Collins will be putting in about $22.5 million into this project in the form of equity and their financing. The City of LaPorte, through the Redevelopment Commission and tax increment financing, will put in $6,775,377. Flaherty and Collins has secured a incentive package from the state of Indiana through what's called their DINO program, which is a program that's designed to help the redevelopment of old industrial buildings and sites. And that will be a credit in the amount of $5,628,000. So if you choose to move forward with passing this ordinance at your next meeting, you'll be moving the tax increment financing portion of the project forward. The way that we arrive at these numbers and the city's contribution to this deal is through a guaranteed tax payment of $440,000 a year from Flaherty and Collins. So when they construct this project, that means they'll be paying in tax or tax plus an additional payment of $440,000 per year for the life of this bond, and those are the funds we use to pay the debt service. So that's the ordinance. Before I stop talking and take some of your questions, I thought I would also touch on the resolution that will be up next for consideration, because they do go hand in hand, and I think the resolution and the ordinance will make more sense when you understand how they're tied together. So the resolution is a sublease agreement with the Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation. And as we began to structure this deal, all of the parties, those being Flaherty and Collins, the city, and all of our representation on the legal and financial side, work together to create a mechanism that's most beneficial for this deal as a whole, but also both entities, being the private entity Flaherty and Collins and the city. And that is using the Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation as in a sublease with that organization to better benefit the project. And this is a tool that's used throughout the state. It takes advantage of some of the way that GLEDC is organized in order to help the city with their portion of this funding arrangement. Ultimately, it greatly benefits this project. So the resolution that'll be read next is connected to the ordinance that we just discussed in that way. So I'm happy to address any particular questions you have. If there are things that I can't answer, I'll obviously punt those over to Jason and Andy as well.
Burton, I guess one question is, so these dollars, it's not like it's coming out of our budget to fund this. These are dollars that currently are not being generated on empty property.
Correct, Mayor. Right now, that property is contributing 0 to the tax rolls. And if Flaherty and Collins does not build anything, it'll continue to generate $0. But the dollars that are being put into this project are directly related to the property taxes that Flaherty and Collins will be paying as part of this construction project. So for those who might say you're giving away money, again, I reference the saying I say often, you can't give away something you don't have, and we don't have any of this at the moment. And so by Flaherty and Collins choosing to build in our community, we're accessing a new tax stream to help finance this project.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we will move this to the next meeting for second reading. Councilman Vincent, resolution.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to read a resolution in its entirety here.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Councilman Vincent.
A resolution of the Common Council of the City of LaPorte, Indiana, approving a sublease between Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation as sublessor and City of LaPorte Redevelopment Commission as sublessee, together with F&C Development as co-sublessee, and addressing matters related thereto. Whereas the City of LaPorte Redevelopment Commission has adopted a resolution approving the proposed sublease agreement between Greater LaPorte Economic Development as sublessor, the Commission as sublessee, together with F&C Development Incorporated as co-sublessee, for the sublease of a project consisting of all or any portion of the to-be-constructed mixed-use project consisting of retail, commercial, and/or office space and residential units, together with related amenities and improvements, which sublease is substantially in the form presented at this meeting. The sublease rentals will be pledged to GLEDC to the City of LaPorte, Indiana, for payment of the principal and interest on one or more series of economic development revenue bonds proposed by the city, pursuant to IC 36-7-11.9 and IC 36-7-12, each as amended, the proceeds of which bonds will be loaned to the city to GLEDC for the financing and/or refinancing of the project. And whereas the Common Council desires to approve the sublease pursuant to IC 36-7-14-25.2, which provides that any sublease approved by the resolution of the Commission must be approved by an ordinance or resolution of the fiscal body of the unit. Now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of LaPorte, Indiana as follows. Section 1, approval of sublease and bond. The Common Council hereby approves the sublease as approved by the Commission pursuant to IC 36-7-14-25.2. The maximum annual rentals under the sublease shall not exceed $800,000. The maximum interest rate on the bonds, which bonds shall, subject to final approval by the common council, be issued in the maximum principal amount not to exceed $9 million, shall not exceed 7% per annum. The term of the sublease shall not exceed 27 years. The bonds, subject to the final approval by this common council, may include a provision for the payment of capitalized interest and shall have such redemption provisions as the city shall determine prior to the issuance of the bond. Section 2, approval of pledge by commission. The common council hereby approves the pledge of the commission of a levy of ad valorem property taxes to enable the commission to make sublease rentals under the sublease to the extent that other available revenues of the commission reasonably expected by the commission to be available are insufficient for such purpose. Section 3, authorization of other actions. The mayor and the clerk treasurer of the city and any other officer, employee, or agent of the city are hereby authorized to direct for and on behalf of the city to execute and deliver any contract, agreement, certificate, instrument, or other document to take any action as such person determines to be necessary or appropriate to accomplish the purpose of this resolution. Such determination to be conclusively evidenced by such person's execution of such contract, agreement, certificate, instrument, or other document of such person's taking of such action. Section 4, effective date. This resolution shall be a full force and effect from and after its passage. End of the resolution.
Thank you. So do I have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to accept the resolution as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and because this is a resolution, we will be taking individual roll call vote on this. Discussion, Bert Cook, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing that was asked to me earlier today that was a good question. The ordinance, obviously, that we just considered will be up for consideration at your next meeting. However, the resolution can be approved today. So the ordinance obviously is the meat behind this. So that nothing goes without the ordinance, but I would appreciate the consideration of the resolution today. That'll give us time to go ahead and get that signed if you so choose to approve, just so we can be ready that if the ordinance is passed at the next meeting, we can continue to move things forward in a timely manner. We have a tight timeline with this project because Flaherty and Collins intends to start the first week of July, start construction. So this would allow us to continue to move this project forward.
Questions?
Just to simplify things, basically the minimum tax payment from Flaherty Collins annually will offset the city's bond payment, correct?
Correct. When you look at the through the life of the bond, that is absolutely correct, Councilman Frankie. In the beginning, there's a little shortfall, and we'll bring some other funds to the table to assist. And then in the end, there's an excess. So we'll have additional funds that over and above the debt service towards the end. But your statement is correct. Over the life of the bond, yes, the tax the property tax that's generated, the $440,000 would cover the debt service.
Thank you.
And those additional funds will come out of the TIF, not out of general fund.
Correct. Everything is coming out of the allocation, that's correct.
Any other questions?
No.
Eric?
So then I go ahead and make a motion to accept the resolution as
We
presented.
have a motion and a second.
We have a motion second, okay.
Any other question? Hearing none, we'll take individual roll call. Clerk Treasurer Partham.
Am I on? Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call vote, so please respond by saying aye, nay, or abstain.
Whoa.
Okay, I think we're good. We'll start with Councilman Vincent, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Councilman Frankie,
Aye.
Councilwoman Cutler,
Aye.
Councilman Galloway. He said aye. Councilwoman West, Councilwoman West?
Is she muted again?
Muted.
No?
Maybe I'm just not close enough. Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councilwoman Ficus?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brown?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, thank you. We have 6 ayes and 1 abstain.
Thank you. Congratulations. Great project. We'll continue to move this forward. Other business. I just want to mention we are in unique times, obviously. The governor of Indiana seems to be opening up the state in early May. It's going to leave all of us with some decisions of how we move our community forward and how we open up. Some of the things, though, since we haven't really had a chance to speak together very often, Clerk Treasurer Parthun and her team have done an amazing job dealing with the public through phone, email, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity just to share what has been happening in the Clerk Treasurer's office, working with all the individuals during this tough time.
All right. So the city of LaPorte has been able, I'm just going to give you guys some statistics on some things that we've been able to do from the utility billing office. So the city of LaPorte has been able to provide customer service remotely for over 300 residents since April 1st from the utility billing office. I was just talking to Joni Lehman, our deputy clerk treasurer, before the city council meeting. We've been able to set quite a few new customers as well remotely for new water. Just finding ways to do business differently, and it's working, and customers are not balking at it, I guess. They're responding very well. So we're going to continue working just how we are currently, remotely, and continuing to provide the best service and be accessible and available to all of our residents as much as we can here at City Hall. So, yep, over 300 residents we've been able to help remotely.
It's been amazing. Are there any other questions you have for Clerk Treasurer Parthun regarding the public, your and our constituents, our residents, making sure that they're being taken care of during this unique time? Okay, also just as a reminder, Jess Bruder, our communications director, is here. And if you haven't seen yet, she came up with the Take 5 program of Take 5 minutes around LaPorte. We want LaPorte to shine. And if you clean up, check out the, whoops, my video's not up. You can get this wonderful orange LaPorte Proud t-shirt. So I really appreciate Jess and her program here, and we're already getting quite a bit of notice and interest from our residents, spending a few minutes out in our community, cleaning up and making it look sharp. So shout out to Jess, who's sitting here in the crowd. Any other questions or things you'd like us to discuss or consider as this agenda from the governor begins to open up business in the state of Indiana? Attorney Nick Otis, I think, has a couple comments.
Yeah, a couple questions on here, Mayor. One person on line 1.
Can you hear Attorney Otis?
Not very well.
Okay, Mayor Thomas DeLorme asked, is this development to be discussed tonight in Newport Land?
Yes, this is the development in Newport Landing that's been worked on for how long? Bert, 2.5 years?
Yeah, so it's 2017, and the development's occurring at the corner of Truesdale and Clear Lake Boulevard, or the former Hole Locker.
Chris Faulkner asked, is the 4th of July parade still on?
The 4th of July parade, we'll look forward to hearing what the JCs decide moving forward. This is still a discussion. It's difficult to make that decision. I know for the JCs, they are doing their best. They've committed to the community. So we'll be have had discussion, and we'll look forward to having discussion moving forward. But as of right,
kind of just some general comments, Mayor, about some of the grocery stores and other places. Maybe just update the community on how what you've heard from retailers.
from a perspective of retail roundtable or Retail Responsibility Act, it's going to be left up to the council, whether you want to extend that. One thing that we're going to, Jeff Batchelor, who's been working with all the retailers over the last few weeks, one of the things that we're talking and speaking with them about is if we do not continue with the Retail Responsibility Act, what are you, Mr. Retailer, going to do to make sure your employees and the clients, the customers are safe to move forward after May 1st? And we've already spoke to a couple, and the ones that we spoke to seem to be very concerned about making sure the employees and the customers are safe while they do their shopping. Okay, well, that was the last question. Any other discussion or questions? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
I have a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you all.